I have a proclivity to try to save a bug's life when I can. Instance being, like, if there's a fly that keeps buzzing around my head, I'm gonna try to catch the fly and put it outside. Mainly, maybe because of, maybe Mr. Miyagi trained me to be like, that's something that you do. It's a cool thing that people do. You can catch a fly out of the air, then you're a fucking master. But you know, spiders. There was a wolf spider in my room the other day, and I was like, hey, it's gonna eat the other kinds of bugs, so I might as well leave it. And there's a spider in my bathroom, and I leave it there. And I actually, for the first time ever, I got to see a spider's molt. So it left its molt in a place that I could see it. And like, I'm always trying to feed this spider little bugs and stuff. So it's like, clearly I care about the life of the spider more than I care about the life of the little bug. You know what I'm saying? I try to save a bug where I can, but if it comes down between a spider and a fly, I'm gonna choose a spider over a fly. A spider and a mosquito, oh my god, I'm gonna choose a spider over a mosquito every time. So I try to help bugs where I can if they're deemed harmless bugs. But there's bugs that are not harmless. Like recently, as of like last night and this morning, termites have found their way into my bathroom somehow. And so I went into the bathroom to take shit, and I see all these termites on the floor. And my first thought wasn't, I need to find these termites a safe place to go. My first thought was, oh my god, I need to squish all these little bugs all over the floor because this is such a travesty. They could, you know, ruin the structural integrity of my home. Or surrounding homes too. That's the thing. We don't know where these termites are coming from. Maybe these termites are coming from a house that was just fumigated and they flew into my bathroom window. Because I saw them like in the tub, and then there was some on the floor, so I'm assuming that they flew in through the bathroom window and landed in the tub and got on the floor and stuff. So I went squishy, 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 squishy. I tried to get as many termites as I could. Because nobody likes a termite. And these termites actually started freaking me out to the point where, like, I opened up the toilet lid. Oh my god, there was termites sitting right on the rim. And I was like, what if I sat down and didn't look first? You know, I'd have termites in my butt. Nobody wants a fucking termite in their butt. I think I've also seen, like, yesterday I saw a video of, like, somebody had bats in their toilets. And then, I've seen videos all the time of spiders being up around the rim. So I already have this fear of there being, like, a spider or, like, a snake. Oh my god, snakes can travel up the drains, and then you got a snake in your toilet. Talk about a snake in your boot. Bro, there's a snake in my toilet. And I guess that's when it gets around to, like, well, these harmless creatures like snakes, bats, and spiders are suddenly enemy number one once you find them in a toilet bowl. You know what I'm saying? The context around where you're finding these spiders and stuff, it's like, varies greatly towards how you treat the spider. I see the spider, you know, up in the corner of the bathroom, I'm fine with that. But I see a spider in the toilet bowl, I'm flushing that guy until it goes down the drain. You know what I'm saying? Like, that spider had nefarious intent, so therefore it's not a cool dude. You know what I'm saying? This spider likes weird, damp, moist corners. I can't trust this guy. He likes the darkness and the damp corner. I don't know, man. This spider's weird. Let me send it down the sewer. Let me send this, whatever bugs crawled up the sewer, let me send them right back down the sewer. Because that's where they belong. They're sewer bugs. Sometimes I get these flies that travel through the fucking drains, I guess. And then they come up out of the drains. And I hate them. I hate them so much. Those are the flies that I actually actively try to catch and feed to the spider. But they're so tiny and fragile that I end up crushing them before I can catch them. But it's just like, I don't know how to make that stop because it's a systemic, it's a system wide. These flies live in the drain and they're just coming up out of the drain towards my house. I could put a drain stopper in. I did that for a while, and it kind of helped. But you know what? It didn't stop them for forever. It only stopped them for that season, and then I didn't do it this season. Now the drain flies are back. I guess I could just like constantly run a little bit slow tap of water, but that's gonna cost money. It's bad for the environment, supposedly. Which water is 100% recyclable. I don't know why we're having the issues that we're having with it. It just, we could desalinate salt water in the sea, and then you could sell that salt that you're desalinating the water with. Oh my god. You wouldn't get much profit on the salt because there's so much salt everywhere, but it would help in the margins. Why do you always do this? She likes to be part of the show, I guess. No, let me do baby. Let me do baby. Hi. Let me do baby. Mm-hmm. She know English. I want to do baby. She doesn't like doing baby though. Fine. Okay, goodbye. This is our usual. This is our modus operandi. She stands on my shoulder like I'm a pirate, and then she hits me in the face with her tail, but it's okay because I love her. And this is a creature of the night. She looks like a raccoon or some shit. Like if I wasn't cool with cats and I just like was walking around the street and suddenly there was like a cat, I think I'd freak out as much as like I freak out when suddenly there's an opossum or suddenly there's a raccoon. Which I freak out in a positive way because for some reason those things are on the good list for some reason for me. Like I remember working at a nursing home and there was a family of raccoons living in the dumpster, and I would rip open the bags of food that I was throwing out so the raccoons could eat it. And it was so adorable and cute, and I left a plank so they could get out so they weren't trapped. And good times. But termites are not raccoons. So whenever you see a termite, or cockroaches too. So I worked at a place in Boston. We had cockroaches in there, and people would like catch the cockroaches and put them outside. And I'm like, dude, it's gonna come right back in. I don't know, man. I don't let cockroaches live for some reason. I'm not that guy. I won't let it happen. Like I saw one on the stairs a couple of weeks ago and I curb stomped it immediately. I was like, not my fucking apartment complex, you don't. And I left its dead body as like a sign to other cockroaches. Like I'll fuck a cockroach up if I find one. Anytime they do anytime somebody like moves out or they do like construction or something, or there's like a lot of movement in the neighborhood, it stirs up the cockroaches, and then they start skittering around. And they're on the no-no list. They're harmless, but they're on the no-no list. They're just gross. They're disgusting. They're little, just gross things that I don't like, just much like termites. So just because I will like say things like I'll spend the time to catch a fly doesn't mean that on the other hand I won't spend the time to kill a cockroach. two things can be true at once. Once you kind of grow up and mature, you learn how to hold two conflicting ideas at once and see the nuance and gray area between them. And it's actually quite a beautiful thing where you can get to see that expanse of, well, all things are true at once, given context. Sometimes I play this game with myself. What would God perceive it like? I've been playing this game ever since I was a little kid. Ever since they introduced me to the concept of omnipresence, I was like, wait, I could do that though. Like, I have presence and I can shift my presence, so why can't I have omnipresence? And they tried to explain it to me like the human mind just can't comprehend omnipresence, and I was like, yeah, but you're introducing this concept to me at a young age. Maybe I could learn how to comprehend it and build a structure in order to be able to understand it. So that's kind of built this baseline of being able to hold two conflicting ideas at once, because in order to hold omnipresence, especially within the mental mindscape, you need to understand how two people can have different perspectives and disagree about a subject, and you need to find out where it is in their perspectives that they're disagreeing, rather than maybe the topic at hand isn't actually what they're disagreeing about. Maybe it's their modus operandi that they're disagreeing about that the topic actually represents. So maybe the topic is like, which day is chore day? And some people that don't like to have a set schedule, they have the perspective of, I don't like to have a set schedule, I like to do my chores when it's time to do the chores. Maybe like, you can't always do laundry day on the same day because your laundry doesn't always add up, on the same schedule as like dishes would. Like dishes you have to do every day, whereas like laundry day, if you start doing laundry every single day that you're doing dishes, you're not going to have enough laundry to wash every single day. Unless you live in like a big household, then maybe. If you got like 17 people, then you could do like one load of laundry every single day that you do them. See, now I'm throwing in another perspective because I'm trying to add in that yes, everything can be true at once, because even where I'm refuting myself, there exists a perspective that could support it. And so that opens up the way for me to hold everything everywhere all at once. Which, cool, good on the movie. Thank you for giving me a fucking phrase for it that other people can conceptualize and relate to. That's awesome. But on the other hand, it's a science fiction movie that takes leeway with a little bit of everything going on, everywhere, everything all at once. So you gotta take things with grains of salt. That was one of those phrases that helped like reconceptualize the architecture of my brain, because if you take something with a grain of salt, what does that even mean? That has no application to how, like, it's one of those phrases that breaks your brain a little bit. It has no application to the actual given context at hand, because you would think a grain of salt is for it's like for like I'm eating. What else would I take with a grain of salt? And it was explained to me that to take something with a grain of salt is to be skeptical of it, and to not accept it without first asking questions and wondering about it. And then it was explained also that like back in like medieval times, they used to take a pinch of salt and to see if the salt was pure or if it was like just like cut with stuff, they would put it in a dish of water and they would see how it dissolved. And if it didn't dissolve and you had sand, if the water got cloudy, then it was cut with like you know, wheat and shit. And if it dissolved cleanly, that meant you had pure salt. So if you take a pinch of salt and you drop it in a dish of water, that's how you determine the purity or the truthfulness of the salt cellar. So when you take something with a grain of salt, you take the grain of salt and you dissolve it in the solvent that is your mind, and you determine its truthfulness based upon a set of parameters and matrices that exist within your mind that qualify something as being true. Your brain basically has these things like what would be a logic gate in a computer. And it's like an if true cycle, where like a really easy one to depict is if you're breathing, you're alive. That's your first logic gate. Okay, I'm breathing, I'm alive. Okay, so cool. We got stuff moving around the system. Stuff's pumping around. Because breathing is intrinsically linked to everything else. And then you have your secondary logic gate would be rate of breath. So you're like, your body would be like, okay, breath rate is high, so need for pumping must also be high. And it starts pumping your heart really hard, and your entire system goes into a higher energy state because your body believes that you need that energy state, because the only reason you would be panting is if you were being put on a draw for resources. So the body liberates resources in order to satisfy the need for panting. But if you're panting and then you suddenly stop, like how I just did, you get a little lightheaded, you get a little dizzy. And I'm used to that, so I'm just working my way through being a little bit dizzy right now. But other people that aren't used to that sudden change sometimes makes them feel lightheaded, makes them stop, makes them pause, makes them maybe even want to sit down. But I have asthma, so when I was little, I would use the inhaler, and that shit would just immediately jack you to 100. And it was great for like gym class. So they would say use it at the beginning of gym class before you even get an asthma attack, so your body's already at that higher energy state, and you'll maybe prevent an asthma attack. Damn. I should start doing that when I go to work out. Instead of working myself out until I get an asthma attack and then using the inhaler, I should start using the inhaler first and getting, oh wow, I'm actually just uncovering something a little bit here too about myself. I'm somebody who kind of opts to work themselves to their maximum and then use the maximum as a rest period. So I'll work my body until it fails, which is like an asthma attack. Sometimes when my lungs got really good for a while there, I would work myself until my legs failed, which was, I would skateboard a lot. And it was just a crazy feeling to be like, okay, they're not gonna work anymore. They're just not gonna work anymore. And I'd have to stop, pull over, and just collapse on the sand somewhere because I just worked them to complete exhaustion. That was a crazy feeling. But like it bought me this baseline of like, I can skateboard a mile whenever I want now. Even if I've been resting for like 6 months, I can just go bang out a mile because I worked myself to exhaustion so many times that my body just understands that there needs to be a baseline of strength here. And it maintains that baseline of strength because it doesn't want to ever get caught off guard. And at the further that you exhaust your body, the stronger that you can become. And I use this like function of the body actually. Like when I'm super tired and I'm super low on energy, I force myself to do a couple push-ups, force myself to do a pull-up, I force myself to go for a skateboard ride, I force myself to use more energy than I have, or more energy than I feel like I have, which starts this cascading process of my body creating and liberating more energy, so that when I sit down to do something like a podcast on a random day, I suddenly have all this high level baseline of energy. Even though I'm a little bit mentally tired or whatever, my body and energy level is so high that I can kind of work my way through it, because I'm building up that metabolic energy. I'm building up that cellular respiration process, my VO2 max basically, so that my body is more efficient with the resources and, you know, energy and oxygen that it has. I'm cracking my back. And big stretch. Sometimes you get a moment where everything kind of loosens up. Oh. And you get these moments where your body realizes, oh man, because I've been making so much extra, I actually have a little bit extra, so I can do this thing like a big stretch. And sometimes I try to just listen to my body. Like, I felt my body kind of being like, hey man, I want to stretch right now. I felt it kind of like asking. So I decided to just give up conscious control. I don't know how else to describe it. I just said, okay, body, you have the wheel. And then body went, okay, I'm doing the thing now. And it only really happens like when I'm like, you know, when you get that stretch reflex, that's when I have to give it over to my body. My body's like, okay, we're doing the stretch. But you can fight yourself through the stretch reflex and ruin your stretch if you're trying to force too hard. Sometimes, like if I just stretch like that right now, I'm not getting the stretch reflex, but I am getting stretch in my muscles. The easiest way that I can liken it to is when you wake up from a really good sleep and you got that kind of stretch. That's the stretch response, or the stretch cycle or system or whatever. That's your subconscious taking over and stretching its body in the way that your subconscious knows that it feels best, because your subconscious has complete telemetry over your physical body in a way that might make your conscious a little bit uncomfortable if you're not used to your body telemetry yet. But it lets you stretch in more natural ways. That's what, when they say like, oh, stretch in a way that feels natural to you, or do something in a way that feels natural to you, that's what they kind of mean. Shut off your analytical mind and let your subconscious just kind of guide you through it. And that's what I do for the podcast a lot, is I just kind of meander on from point to point to point. Like, I know that there was a point earlier that I'm trying to get back to. I don't even remember what the point was right now, but I know I'll maybe find my way back to it, and if I don't, I'll be watching this back later and I'll be like, oh man, I know what point I was talking about. There's sometimes where I'm watching it back later And I'm like, in the video, I forget a word in the moment, but then when I'm watching it back later, I remember the word the minute I'm at where I'm like forgetting it. I'm like, what do I do? Do I go back and edit it? Do I put in the... That's just where it gets to the point of just letting things live as they are. I'm like, all right. I'm glad that I know the word now that I'm watching it. Like, that wasn't a permanent state of fucking not knowing that word. But it just feels a little silly when I'm watching it back and then that word immediately comes to me as I'm watching it back. And I'm like, ugh, because I know the word subconsciously, but those are the moments where I let the conscience take over a little bit too much and it starts tripping me up a little bit. No brands. I'm not showing brands on the show until they start paying me. But and so I've been in touch with my subconscious ever since I was like a little kid, doing like meditation and stuff. So to a degree, I kind of have like full-blown conversations with my subconscious or with myself. Like I remember my dad telling me that like your subconscious doesn't speak in language, but that's what I'm trying to say is like my subconscious and I have been learning language and everything along with each other like this entire time, to the point where sometimes my subconscious, like, I'll just randomly get ideas, like it'll just feel like intuition. Like, what's something that I intuitively did lately? Oh yeah, I bought this pop socket, right? And it only works with friggin' iPhones. So then I had a broken iPhone case with MagSafe, so I ripped out the MagSafe and I glued it to the back of this phone case. So now I have a MagSafe phone case that works with its little, it has a wallet folio too that I don't really use lately. It's too thick and bulky. But yeah, if I wanted to use it, it would still be actionable with everything that works with everything. Ooh, that made a funny noise. So that's like one of those ways that I just intuitively was like, hey, I got all the parts. Let me just slap them all together. I don't know what else that I can really say about that, because like the bracelets, they're not really like, when I make them, they're not really intuitive patterns. They're very much like purposeful patterns. Like this one goes all the way from like, see, light to dark, kind of like a pattern. It's a very conscious effort. Dude, I gotta put my hair up. It keeps tickling my nose. See? Okay, there we go. There's a revelation of a subconscious pattern. I kept noticing that my nose kept getting tickly. And I didn't like the fact that, like, I guess that's my subconscious or my ego or something. I didn't like the fact that I kept itching my nose throughout this video. I tried to ignore it. And I said, whatever, let things be as they are. But there's also a solution that I ignored because I was trying to ignore the sensation of my nose being itchy. I was trying to not address it at all. And I didn't realize that, oh my God, it's itchy because the oscillating fan keeps blowing a couple of strands across my nose every couple of minutes. I wanted to just keep trying to ignore it, like, oh, if I itch it once, it won't happen again. But this is like the 5th or 6th time I've itched my nose. So I'm like, okay, fuck, I gotta do something about it to address this. I recognized that pattern, and I even recognized my own reluctance within the pattern to recognize the pattern. which allowed me to find an avenue to end up fixing the issue that was being ignored in the forefront. Which goes back to holding multiple perspectives at the same time in order to simulate or conceptualize omnipresence, which I guess was also born out of a want to understand why people argue, because there's always people arguing around me for what felt like really simple solutions. But they were still arguing nonetheless, which made me realize that the people aren't often arguing about what they're talking about. They're arguing for their perspective, their lived experience. And sometimes when you have people that had two kind of, equally not as good lived experiences, they clash a little bit because they get stuck in that mentality of like, why has this happened to me? And they stop and they don't really realize too much that it's not really any longer why did it happen to me, it's why are you doing this to others now? They didn't realize the changeover, because at a certain point I'm finding you always become your enemy. Anytime that you label somebody like your enemy or whatever, I always end up like repeating their behavior or like doing what they did. Great example is marijuana. I hated that my siblings smoked weed when I was little, bro. I vehemently abhorred, not abhorred, abhorred, hated weed, dude. I disliked it so much. It smelled bad. My siblings would always become stupid and inconsiderate whenever they smoked. They would always become forgetful and just rude and fucking stupid. And I didn't like that. I was like, you guys are smarter than this. Yet you're smoking weed. You're getting so fucking stupid that you're forgetting that you made promises to me last week. And I think that's what really pissed me off the most, is that they would make promises and then they would go fucking la la land and forget that they made promises. And then I would be the one that was stuck in the same reality that they fucking tried to escape by smoking weed. And I'm saying, hey man, I'm still in this reality that you guys fucking ignored 5 times over by now. That reality doesn't cease existing just because you forgot about it. Just because you're making yourselves forget about these things doesn't mean that the promises cease to exist. They still exist. And that made me hate weed. Because I was like, it's the reason why my siblings aren't being, the best versions of themselves that they can be. It's the reason why, for partially, it was the reason why, like, my parents were fighting a lot of the time, because they were fighting with my siblings themselves over their drug use and shit. It wasn't all just weed. I gotta add in, like, me as a kid, ignorantly, I was like, because weed's the most obvious one, and apparently it's the one that everybody's like, whatever, it's okay, fucking everybody knows about the existence of weed. There was other shit going on, and they were always arguing with them about it. So I saw this perspective of like, man, if these guys just weren't doing drugs, like 60% of the arguments in the household would be gone. And that's why I just was like, I hate it so much. But by the time I was a teenager, my parents were already divorced. Marijuana was already legal. And the perspective around it societally had shifted already to the point where I was the odd man out, being the person hating it. I was the odd man out, being the fucking teetotaler, anti-drug guy, the fucking dare to say no guy. I was the one that had the fucking old school perspective. I was the fucking old head with the fucking wrong perspective. And it took literally the entire society shifting before I was like, maybe I'll try it. It took legalization. It took like constant like exposure, and it took like normalization for me to be like, okay, maybe it is actually more normal than I thought it was. At which point I tried it. And I'm the youngest sibling out of them all. My parents were like, at that point in time, like, whatever. They all thought that it was. After I started smoking weed, they told me that they all thought it was inevitable. They were just waiting for when, and I actually surprised them. But I think the first time I smoked, I was like 16. And they were like, you actually surprised us by waiting so long. We thought you smoked right around like 13. That's when everybody else did it. And I was like, no, what are you guys, stupid? What the hell? I waited to a point where I felt as though I was developed. And I remember even saying to myself, well, I've already had several like mental breakdowns without even smoking weed in the first place. Like, I've already had all of these kinds of events because I lived in such a stressful household that the pure stress of just living in the household would oftentimes cause me to short circuit, and I just couldn't comprehend like reality as it was, because I was dumbfounded by the incompatibility that I found around me. And also, to a degree, like, there's just certain stimuli that if you're constantly exposed to it, it's going to stress you out, like yelling, certain sound frequencies, certain tones, certain environments of like unpredictability and instability. Make anybody lose their damn marbles. And I was exposed to that ever since really, really, really young age. So I have learned how to cope with it. But at the same time, by the time I was like 16, I had said to myself, you know, man, I've already pretty much experienced the full breadth of what the mind can handle. I've already experienced the full breadth of, like, you know, the worst of the worst. So I don't really think that I don't think that weed can do anything else that hasn't been done to me already. Like, I don't think weed can trigger a mental breakdown or anything that hasn't already happened. So then I went and I smoked weed, and it didn't fucking do anything. I was sitting there and I was smoking, and I was like, when's it gonna kick in? And I kept smoking, and the rest of the entire day I just kept smoking. I remember we ended up going to the movies, and we saw a Split, and I remember on the way to the movies we were smoking a bong in the car, and it was a great fun time. And I was like, I don't feel any different. My eyes felt a little bit different, but I didn't really feel much different. And then we went to the movies and we saw a Split. And then when they tied it in at the end there, I was like, rip shit. I was like, yo, fuck you, I would have seen this as a sequel anyways. You guys suck. But I guess if they toted it as a sequel, we would have wanted to see more of Bruce Willis than we did in Split. So I guess that's a good reason why they didn't advertise it as a sequel. I'm seeing that now as I get older, as I'm an adult. See that now as I'm looking back. I started yelling at the end of the movie. The lights were already on. I waited for the fucking lights in the full movie, and I was like, fuck you. I was genuinely mad. That was my first time seeing an M. Night Shyamalan movie in the theaters, and then he twisted it right at the end like he always does, and I was like, oh, this is how everybody always feels. And then smoking weed my second time, that scared me out of it. I was like, I'm never gonna smoke weed again. I like lived my life over and over and over and over and over and over again. So yeah, when people are like, wow, you seem really like older than you are, I'm like, it's because I'm actually 10,000 years old. My consciousness has actually lived 10,000 of these single lifetimes already. What happened to me was like, I got an asthma attack and my lungs like seized up, and I couldn't, because it was cold out and the bong air was hot, and I couldn't get more air into my lungs, and I didn't have an inhaler, so I collapsed on the ground. And then somebody got me an inhaler, and I like barely got over the car, like wandered over to the car, because I knew I just needed to sit down. And I've told this story a couple of times, and as I opened the car door, I got stuck in like frame loading. I don't know how else to call it. My brain was only loading things frame by frame, and it was loading the last couple of frames for continuity, and then the next frame. The last couple of frames, next frame. I could see the actual processing, like my consciousness, I guess, detached from my body process in such a way that I got to experience the flicker rate of my eyeballs. I got to experience the screen rate of my eyeballs feeding to my brain. That's the only way I know how to describe it. When I was younger, I was like, I relived it over. I tripped out over trying to explain it. But as I get older and I like learn more about like computers and technology and stuff, I'm like, all right. So what ended up happening was I jumped up to 120 FPS while my hardware was stuck running at 60. So my processor could see the real-time updates of the fucking system before the system compiled them into the cohesive stream of consciousness. Which I guess is how cohesive my consciousness is, which is pretty cool. And then I got into the car, and I was still experiencing that, but they, like, in reality, they had all, like, my friends had all filtered into the car, and they started to drive away, and it felt like forever getting to this point, but it was only like a minute. I slammed the car into reverse. I tried to put it in park, and in one sense of my memory, I did put it in park, and I said, I need to sit here for a second. It'll be okay if we just sit here. But in their reality, I passed out. I only made it to reverse, and I passed out. Which is kind of fucked up, because inside of my, like, reality, inside of my brain and stuff, I passed out into, like, the blackest, darkest, most off state that I'd ever been in, where, like, somebody just unplugged the computer. I had definitely said this before in the podcast. And right before the computer turned off, it was like I relived everything from the beginning, but in error correction mode. So if, say I had a memory, I was reliving it all the way from the beginning, and then, like, say I had a memory at, like, 5 years old, but if I did something wrong with my consciousness within the memory, the entire thing would start back again from zero, and then I would live up until that point again, where I would have to make the right choice, and if I made the right choice, it wouldn't restart anymore. And it did that ever since the beginning. Like, so I had to make the right choices, remembering things as a baby, or else it would restart again. And that happened all the way up until the current moment that I was living in. And then everything fast forward and then turned off. And then I did like a system reboot and I like reset. Where like my consciousness was cohesive through all of this. Like it was a solid object traveling through this journey. Which I guess is why you want to be mature the first or the second time that you smoke weed. You want to have a sense of your own personality and your own identity so you can have that cohesive fucking like light body to move through the experience with. And I remember like waking up in the wrong universe a couple of times. And like this one time I looked down at my hands and I had like monkey hands and went, oh no, I'm in the wrong universe. And everybody had monkey faces. And I was like, oh fuck, I'm in the monkey verse. And then I passed back out again. And then I kept waking up in like different universes until this one point where I was right outside of my house and I felt like I was like in the original thing, but my body was like cold and I felt dead. And maybe at that point I had gotten hypothermia because like it was like winter time and it was like negatives out and like my blood pressure hadn't been pumping as hot. But I remember just being like frozen solid trying to move my body, and my friends were like, you gotta move now, Adam. And I'm like, oh, I'm trying. I can't. And then my cat fucking came out of nowhere, like on a winter's day, which we don't usually let him out in the winter, so that's kind of weird. He came out of nowhere and like found me and they're like, Adam, there's your cat, don't you want to get your cat? And I was like, yeah. And then I like, that was my trigger to go, and I followed my cat like a spirit animal, and then I chased him to the front door, and my friends like knocked on the front door and then ran away. And then my dad called them, and they had told me to tell my dad that it was alcohol because their fucking stupid minds were thinking, oh, well, he's come home drunk before throwing up. His dad won't be as mad if he is drunk, rather than like, because it was my first time smoking weed. He's never known that I'd smoked weed before. They're like, his dad will be mad if he knows it's weed. So they had told me to lie to my dad. And I was too fucking drunk to be like, all right. I mean, I was too high to be like, I'm not gonna lie. And then I just said that I'm drunk. I drank too much vodka. And my dad called them up because he thought that they were driving around with a bottle of vodka, which is a big, big, big no-no. You don't want people drinking and driving, especially at such a young age. So he called them up. And that actually made him more upset than if we told him the truth that we were smoking weed, and then that's what happened. And then I had that vehement reaction to marijuana, which was also probably an ego death. My body was probably so disgusted with its own self after smoking weed that it just decided to kill itself. Which I don't know any other way to kind of describe it. I did something that I had always said I would never do, to the point where my body like had to reevaluate all of my life decisions from moment one. I think in part I probably had some kind of oxygen deprivation, and I probably did technically maybe die for like a short maybe a couple of seconds before my body like restarted itself. And I honestly don't know how it restarted itself. I mean, maybe the inhaler got my heart pumping to such a degree that like I don't know. But I had always said I'd never smoke weed, and you'd think after that second experience I would never smoke weed again. After it was just terrible. I was covered in vomit. I was throwing up. I was fucking multiverse of madnessing it. It was it's not multiverse of madness, is it? With the one with the Scarlet Witch, is that it? The Cesar Chavez girl, America Chavez. Cesar Chavez is the dog guy. I guess that was the birth of being able to hold two conflicting ideas at once. I'm never gonna smoke weed, and then smoking weed. You know, my brain had liberated the pathways to being able to hold conflicting ideas and ideologies. I guess that's why I'm talking about it too, because that was one of the first times where I ever said, let me do something that's completely conflicted with my identity thus point so far. And you would think, going back, you would think, why is he a daily smoker if he has such a fucking crazy experience? But it started with, we would go to parties and I would drink, and then when I drank, I would crave weed. I would be like, I want to smoke a little bit of weed. I would maybe get a little bit too drunk too. I'd be a little bit kind of like on the verge of being like getting the spins. Which you would think, why would you smoke weed if you're getting the spins? But it's the adverse effect of a drug. I was thinking about sometimes with like, okay, so ADHD people, they give them basically speed because their bodies are already hyperactive, so the speed actually slows them down. And I was thinking that same exact pharmacokinetic thinking of like, oh, I'm getting the spins. Well, let me go get the thing that makes me spinny, and it'll make the spins stop. If I'm spinning this way and the other thing is spinning this way, and then the two spins will cancel each other out. And it did. It worked. I don't know why it worked, but it worked for me. I would smoke weed, and then the spins would stop, and I could go partying on more. But then I started smoking weed without drinking. Smoking weed and drinking at the same time heightened my tolerance, or built my tolerance to marijuana to such a degree that I could smoke it when I was not drinking and not have such a bad reaction to it. And then right around like 18 or 17, 18, like 17 and a half to 18, I started smoking like every day. I remember the morning of our senior year first day, we woke up extra early so that we could roll blunts and smoke weed before school. We smoked like 3 blunts before school. And then another kid fucking like brought a bottle of vodka and shit because he couldn't join us, but he was like, I'm gonna get fucked up anyways. So by that point I was pretty much smoking like every day, because I just liked how it made my brain feel. It suddenly made my brain feel a lot less stringent than it had previously felt, and I could actually like ignore things and zone out and stuff like that. Whereas before, it was like always very difficult for me to kind of like zone out, because so many things always had my attention. It was always hard for me to kind of pull my awareness back, which is what like necessitated the foundation for learning how to meditate and being in touch with my subconscious ever since a young age, because it was inherently difficult for me ever since a young age to control my attention and awareness. And weed allowed me to pull back my attention to such a degree that I could find things funny and absurd, and I could experience different perspectives with their limbic system responses. So it's like I could try on all these funny different hats whenever I smoked weed, and whatever hat I liked, I could buy, and like I could put it on next time I smoked weed, and that would be the same, like, kind of memory hat awareness environment. Because I also have like a really good memory, but I was noticing that to a degree I was having trouble with encoding events. Like, when somebody is studying and they put a piece of chocolate around the fact that they want to learn, and then when they read that fact, they eat the piece of chocolate, and then when they're taking the test, they go and they eat the chocolate to help bring back all those memories that they encoded to the flavor of the chocolate. Yeah, I was running out of like encoders, so like nicotine and weed gave me 2 new encoders to help encode like a new identity and memories and things like that. And it gave me basically a save file that I could build without other people's influence and interference, which also led me to making a lot of stupid decisions, but also at the same time, I needed the experience, because I had detached wisdom from experience. Now, I had attached only wisdom to experience. Now I have detached wisdom from experience, and I can garner wisdom without fully experiencing things, but I needed to go through that period of learning how to attach and detach them so I could do it at will and not be locked into a certain perspective, which goes back to like omnipresence as a practice. My ultimate perspective that I always like revert back to, or the baseline perspective, is always one of like trying to perceive everything. I want to be able to understand and perceive anything, because from the place of understanding, you can agree or disagree fully, and fundamentally. Like, you can find out the fundamental parts of what it is that you're disagreeing with. Like, when I save a fly, why am I disagreeing with killing a fly? For me, I have a weird perspective. The reason I disagree with killing a fly is I notice every time that I get the fly swatter out and I start just whacking flies, more show up. But if I catch a fly and I throw it outside, I'll only get 1 fly for like the entire month. So I'm, on one hand, I'm like, he's sending a message out to his fly friends. He's telling them, don't go in there. That guy's some kind of Quasimodo fucking fly catcher. He'll just catch you and whip you out the window. But on the other hand, maybe it's like an energetic thing where like I'm setting up like this like, both options are equally crazy. The flies are communicating with each other, or I'm setting up this like area or this energy of like, I won't break my like modus operandi. I won't change who I am in the presence of a fly. I will simply adapt in a way that I can get rid of these flies. But there's certain things like termites. Going back to it from the beginning, they fly. They have little wings. They look like they look like flies. Why don't I feed them to the spider? Something about termites where I say it's just, I personally am like, no, I don't want to be responsible. For me, I feel like if I see a termite, I will be responsible for any kind of termite damage that happens around me, because I didn't stop those termites when I saw them. Maybe that's just knowing how bad termites can be. Maybe that's also knowing how bad cockroaches can be. As soon as you see one, they lay that trail. And it's the same thing about ants. As soon as you see one ant, they lay that trail. And if they find something good, you're going to see a line of ants. You're going to see a line of cockroaches. You're going to see a nest. And then that's the point where I think it's these creatures that want to move into your house and nest where you're nesting. I think those are the creatures that we, as a society, go, okay, no, these are actually bad creatures because they want to take over and not live in harmony. You can live in harmony with the spider because you feed it flies. You can live in harmony with the flies because you need something to feed to the spider. But you can't live in harmony with a termite because a termite will eat the floor out from underneath you. A termite doesn't care about spiders or flies. A termite cares about eating wood. And that's all a termite cares about. But we use wood for things that aren't food. And a termite only thinks it's food. For us, it's like we're building our houses out of gingerbread. To the termites, it's like we're building the houses out of gingerbread. For us, we're building the houses out of a sturdy, stable object. You gotta think about it too, like cockroaches, those are the things that like they build up nests and then they multiply and they lay their eggs and then they try to outnumber you to a degree. I think that's ultimately the cockroaches, goal is outnumber whatever is the competing organism in the area. And that goes back down to like the subconscious of, can you exist with these things that exist with these things that are counter to your existence? Can these two things exist at once? And yes, they can exist at once. You can have a cockroach and a person in a room at the same time. But eventually, the way that the cockroach is programmed, it's one or the other. And you can't exactly live with a cockroach that's programmed one or the other, because eventually one day it's gonna multiply and do its thing. That was my dad's reasoning for why he didn't want to buy a wolf. He said that he had the opportunity to buy a wolf German Shepherd hybrid, and he didn't because the hybrid wolf creatures, like he went into the pen and the alpha like tested him immediately, like hopped up on his shoulders and looked down into him, and he said he got scared by that. He didn't want to live with something that you constantly had to be on guard for being an alpha, which yeah, I can definitely see how that fear transpired into other different things. But you also got to look at it to a degree that also that's how fear controls you. He had this oversight of fear about being the alpha that eventually led to him vying for alpha position, much like in that episode of American Dad, where Stan thinks that he's an aging lion. It's because the fear builds up a response that you wouldn't normally be taking because it's programmed to a degree in that way. And you or I, as a human being, have to try and defy that programming. Or at least that's how I see it, is the goal is to always defy the base level programming in order to be better than it. This is the base level of what a human is capable of, but I have a comprehension of what humans can be more of, so I have a responsibility to try and live up to what I can comprehend. And like I said, it goes back to trying to perceive everything everywhere all at once, that you build up this ability to hold multiple different perspectives at once and see the nuance that connects them all, but also keeps them separate. And if you can pick on that nuance, then you can find things in order to bring people who are separate together. And I think that's kind of where I want to leave it today. I don't know if it made much sense. I'm gonna watch it back, see where it's at, and then we'll go from there. Peace out.